And with that, I'm very pleased to welcome Dr. Kang to speak with us today. Dr. Lee is a Tier 1 Canada Research Chair at Dr. Eric Jackman Institute of Child Study, Applied Psychology and Human Development at University of Toronto. He's a developmental psychologist who studies moral development and the development of lying in children between 2 and 16 years of age. His past research has focused specifically on children's moral understanding of lying and truth-telling in different social cultural contexts, their actual lie and truth-telling behaviors in such contexts, and the relationship between these two. And in addition to his many wonderful groundbreaking work, his work has also led to the passage of a bill in the Canadian Parliament in 2005, which concerns legal evidence obtained from children. And since 2006, the procedure based on his work has been mandatory when admitting children to testify as a witness in the Canadian criminal court. So that's, I think, really cool to see some of the work that developmental psychologists do or moral psychologists do have this direct impact on the lives and the way we do things in the court. So I'm very excited to have him here today. So please join me in welcoming him as he presents How Children Learn to Tell Lies.
Thank you very much, Martin, to invite me. Thank you very much, Jim, for inviting me. I'm very happy to do that. And so let me, all right. So before I start, I want to just point out that the research I have been doing over the last nearly almost 30 years, 29 years to today, has been funded by funding agencies from US, from Canada, and from mainland China. And also my research has been really the fruits of international collaboration, as you can see here, from people all over the world, from North America to Asia to Europe, including Turkey. Today's talk is sort of an extended version of my TED Talk. If you don't have time, you can look this one up. So the question people always ask me, Kang, why do you study lying for so long, for almost 30 years? Well, the real reason is actually I was very curious about how children learn to tell lies when I was in the graduate school. One of the main reasons at that time was I looked up the PsycInfo. I typed in lying and children. There were all less than 50 papers to read. I say, that's great. I can do my PhD thesis with only 50 papers to read. That's great. So that's how I got started. But then when I applied for grants, I always give these reasons. So the reason I'm interested in studying the development lying is both for theoretical and practical reasons. Theoretically, so I just want to point out Darwin actually was the very first person who published a scientific paper about lying in children. 1872. And he basically wrote a diary about his son who was at 2.5 years of age. And he stole sugar from the kitchen and lied about this. So Darwin was extremely worried about his kids' well-being in the future. He worried for over a decade and until later on discovered his son was okay. So anyhow, so Piaget is another person who wrote a wonderful book about moral judgment, and he discovered that children, when they make judgment about about lying, the definition of lying actually has moral judgment in it. That is, if something is not sanctioned by parents, by teachers, it's a lie. So it doesn't have to be untruth. If swearing can be considered a lie because it's not sanctioned by adults. So there are a lot of interesting things in this book that was very inspiring. And then the third one is the most inspiring. I call this my Bible. It's called The Studies in Deceit by Harshon and May, who basically was the very first group of people who created all sorts of lab procedures to study the actual behaviors of cheat and one chapter about lying. And so I basically stole a lot of their ideas and then to do my work for almost my entire career. And then the practical reason for studying this is, as Martin mentioned, that there's a great need for us to find out when our kids, when they come to court to testify, are telling the truth. But how do you ensure the kids are going to telling the truth and not lying? So there are a lot of things we have to do. So that's one of the practical reasons that motivated me to do part of my research in the last 30 years. Anyhow, so but before I start, let me tell you a story. So this is my friend, he's Richard Messina. He's a principal at our lab school at the University of Toronto. So he got a call one day. So the caller said that, Mr. Messina, my son Johnny will not come to school today because he's sick. So when Richard asked, who am I speaking to, please? And the caller said, I am my father. So I really like to tell this story because it summarizes everything we know, we thought we know, or our beliefs about kids lying. Number one is we kind of say, well, kids only will tell lies when they get to elementary school. Number two is if kids do lie, their lies could be so ill-crafted, we adults can easily detect their lies. Number three is, I guess, we always believe that if a kid, just like Darwin, if the child telling a lie at a very young age before elementary school, something's wrong with the child. So the child will grow up, become a criminal or a banker or the president of the United States. But anyhow, and then let's just figure out, from evidence whether or not these beliefs are correct. So anyhow, but before we go on, there are actually many types of lies you can study, and I have been studying. So one type of lie is called white lie. So these are lies told for politeness purposes. And then the second kind of lies are called blue lies. These are lies told to protect a group. The reason it's called blue lies is because the lies typically are told, these kind of lies typically told by a police who lie in the name of justice, but they actually lie in court all the time, actually. So, but because they are uniformed in blue, so it's called blue lies. And the third kind of lies are called the modesty lies, and these are lies told to be modest, and they are typically told by East Asians such as Chinese, Japanese, and Koreans. So when I got 100% on my math exam, if Jim asked me, Kang, how did you do on your math exam? So I say, oh, not very good, not very good. And that is you're supposed to do. Otherwise, you're going to be in big trouble. So you have to be modest about your accomplishments. The fourth one is something we discovered only in the last decade. It's called the parenting lies. So these are lies parents told in the name of parenting. So for example, they say, if you don't eat, finish your food, and I'm going to send you to jail, which of course never would happen, but that kind of threat is a lie. Anyhow, so it's very interesting kind of lies, and that's a universal across the world. Anyhow, but today I want to focus on one kind of lies that is basically common across all the world. It's called the self-interest lies. I won't start from the beginning. There are no cross-cultural differences in terms of how we learn to tell self-interest lies. So this is my research agenda over the years. So what I want to do is I want to look at the child in the center. I will look at the cognitive, social, neural, and social contextual and cultural factors that contribute to children's learning about how to tell lies. So that's my agenda. And then, so the way we do it, unlike some of the other people who did it, is we always ensure that the kids are lying out of their own volition. So before us, some people did lying studies with kids, but experimenters would tell kids to tell lies. So we thought that's just not natural. So we want kids to tell lies out of their own volition. They make the decision. They don't know, we know they are actually lying. So anyhow, so this is one of the scenarios we actually stole from Harshon and May. But in this case, so we ask kids to play a card game. We tell them if they guess the numbers on the card correctly, they will get a big prize. And then in the middle of the game, we say, oh, I'm sorry, I have to go to the washroom. So we go, before we leave, we tell them, do not turn around, peek at the numbers on the cards. Then we take off. But of course, we always do not trust kids. So we put hidden cameras everywhere in the room, and then we leave the room. And then because the situation is so tempting, so more than 90% of the kids would peak within about 15 seconds. So this is a very tempting situation. So now the question, we don't really care about this because we want to make as many kids peak as possible, because when we come back, we want to ask kids, when I was gone, did you peak? We want to know whether or not they are going to lie about their peaking. So that's the key dependent measurement. Okay, so this is what we found consistently across the world. So basically, about 30% kids will lie at 2 years of age about their transgression, peaking at something. And then at 3 years of age, so at 2 years of age, 30% lie, 70% tell the truth. At 3 years of age, 50% lie, 50% tell the truth. And after 4 years of age, more than 80% of the children will lie. So this is consistent across the world. Anyhow, so then we say, okay, so let's look at the younger kids. Why some of the kids lie, some of the kids don't lie? So what are the differences? What are the factors make them, behave differently about the honesty about their transgression? So we look at all sorts of obvious factors, including gender, whether or not females are more likely to lie than boys, temperament, whether or not the shy people are less likely to lie than non-shy people, and whether or not there are country differences, cultural differences, whether or not there are parenting differences, whether or not you're from a religious family, you're more likely to lie. And turned out none of these are correlated with children's decision to lie. And so, by the way, so there are many more other factors actually, and I spent about more than 20 years to go through all these factors and doing also studies with my colleagues everywhere. Anyhow, so finally, so we were able to identify two significant predictors. One predictor is theory of mind. So this is basically children's ability to understand that different people have different intentions, beliefs, desires. So that's called the theory of mind. And the other one is executive functioning. So that is a children's ability to plan, to inhibit certain behavior, to switch from one behavior to another, and to execute a behavior. And so these fundamental cognitive skills turned out to be essential for children to learn to tell lies. This is the conclusion we have found, and I'm going to show you some of the data. So young children with better theory of mind, understanding, and executive functioning tell lies earlier and are more sophisticated liars. So in other words, so those kids who lie at 2 years of age are actually more cognitively developed. They have better executive functioning, better theory of mind. And so that is totally against what we thought we believed. So basically lying, instead of it as a bad sign, as Darwin was worried about, it turned out lying is a good sign. So if you tell a lie earlier, it's a good sign to tell you have arrived at a developmental milestone earlier than kids of your similar age. So anyhow, so this is, someone said that anyhow, so now the question though is, we have done most of the studies using correlational methods. So we know executive functioning is uniquely correlated with lying in children. We also know theory of mind is uniquely correlated with lying in children. But are these factors causing children to lie? So we did a study by training children how to do theory of mind tasks. So, and then we did a pre-test and post-test test. That the pre and post-test is really about whether or not children can lie. So I'm going to show you a video later on about how this whole thing unfolds. But it just basically, as you can see here, the experimenter would ask child to hide a candy in one of the 3 boxes. And then the experimenter turns around, asks child to hide it and cover up the box. And then experimenter turns around and says, where did you hide the candy? If the child lies, then the child wins the candy. If a child tells the truth, the child loses the candy. The experimenter actually takes the candy and eats it. So this is a highly competitive game, and kids, are very engaged. And then, so we only select kids at 3 years of age who do not know how to lie. So they always tell the truth. And therefore, they always lose the candies in 10 consecutive trials. And after, so that's day one. And day two, then we provide children with theory mind training that would have nothing to do with playing this game. So, and then control kids would get Piagetian tasks and high intensity cognitive training to do so-called conservation tasks. And after that, then when they finish training, then we give a post-test on day 15. So it's about 2 weeks of training. And then after that, we stop training. Then we do follow-ups day 16, 21, and 47. We just want to know how long our training effect would last. So this is what we found. So basically, they pre-test, of course, none of the kids would be able to tell lies, and then we randomly assign them to two conditions, experimental and the control conditions. In the experimental condition, we train them how to do theory mind reading, theory mind training, and then you can see post-test significantly more kids now are able to tell lies. And then when we follow them up, their lying almost reached to 100%. So there's long-term impact of early theory mind training. So the conclusion is, so theory mind training can cause children to learn to tell lies. So what about executive functioning? We also tried studies to do that, and we had a very weak effect, not because I don't think there's no relation between the two, but because executive function training, it was difficult. So we haven't really published this paper yet because the effect is too weak. Anyhow, but we suspect that there is direct causal relationship between executive functioning and theory mind. But anyhow, then another question you can ask is, what if we train kids to tell lies? Is that going to help kids to improve their theory mind and executive functioning? And so that's exactly what we did. But in this study, what we did was we teach kids how to play this game. So until the kids can do it 100%. So then we measure kids' theory mind abilities and executive functioning. And this is what we found. So the first panel shows the lying scores before and after, the pre and the post. Of course, the experimental conditions, because we train them how to play the game, they can do very well, close to 70% overall. So now the question is, can we improve kids' theory mind, executive functioning? Yes, so there's a significant improvement of executive functioning scores in the experimental condition, but not in the control condition. And can we improve children's theory mind? Yes, we can. So in the experimental condition only. So as you can see, so what I'm showing to you here is the causal relation can be the other way around. That is, so lying can cause children to improve their executive functioning and theory mind. So I'm still needing to finish off that direction, the blue line, hopefully in the near future. Anyhow, so then we have done all sorts of other studies to look for other factors that may contribute to children's lying. So one is the environment in which it's punitive or non-punitive. And this is a study, natural experimental study we did in West Africa. And in this country, there were 2 private schools that the rich families would send their kids to study. But the one school uses North American method to punish kids if they behave mainly by scolding. But the other school uses corporal punishment. If you've done something wrong, they will beat you up. And so these are the 2 different schools, but parents voluntarily send their kids to these 2 schools. And we looked at the school, the children's lying and the ability to tell lies. We found out kids in the punitive school tend to lie earlier and more than kids in the non-punitive schools. And their lying ability are actually as good as kids at 7 years of age in Canada or in Asia. So lying seems to, punitive environment seems to foster kids who tell lies earlier, and then they tell lies better. So another one we looked at is moral discussion. So would the moral discussion make any difference to children's lie telling? So we had a control group with 5, 6-year-old. So if we don't have anything, the lying rate is 80%. Then before we ask children, when I was gone, did you peek at the toy? We had discussion about the moral obligations of telling the truth, the importance of truth telling, and the negativity of lying. And in hope, kids would listen and they would lie less. But turn out this kind of discussion is totally useless. So you basically waste your breath to talk to kids about the importance of truth telling. And we've done similar studies many times, totally useless. And there's no relationship between children's moral understanding of the obligations of truth telling or lying and their actual lying behavior. So they typically preach but do not practice, very much like we adults. So anyhow, however, we discovered that if you ask kids to promise to tell the truth, even though they actually do not know what a promise is, they are more likely to tell the truth. So we also have replicated this study in many situations, not only in terms of lying, but also in terms of cheating. So if you ask a child, promise not to cheat, they are less likely not to cheat. If you ask the child, promise not to tell a lie, they are less likely to tell a lie. So promise making seems to be a very effective method and robust method to induce truth telling. And the next one is modeling. So again, 5, 6-year-old. So if we do nothing, the lying rate is 80%. But if you have another child who's telling the truth about his or her transgression and get rewarded with rewards, physical rewards, the kids are actually more likely to tell the truth to you. So now they see a model doing that and without negative consequences, even with the positive consequences, and they are going to tell the truth. But you can take away the physical reward, but just give kids praise, you get the same results. Right? Sorry. Yeah, so you get the same results here. Anyhow, so modeling seems to be another very useful tool to promote honesty. And then what about storytelling? So we did a study in which we use a tortoise hair as a moral story, but has nothing to do with lying and as a control condition. So in this situation, we have more diverse kids. So the lying rate is about 68% in the control condition. Then we told children, another group of children, the boy who cried wolf, in which the boy actually was eaten by the wolf. So there's serious negative consequences about lying. And we want to know whether or not kids are going to tell the truth or lie. And turned out it's not useful. So then we realized that because these kids are pretty young, so they may not know anything about death. So we say, okay, maybe if there's immediate consequence, kids are more likely to tell the truth. So we told them a story about Pinocchio. And if you lie, their nose is going to grow. So it turns out this one is also useless. So then we told them a story about George Washington, who actually told the truth about him cutting down his father's favorite cherry trees. And only this condition, there's a significant reduction in lie telling. So then the interesting thing about this story is it actually never happened. So this is a story all American kids know, learning from elementary school. But this story was made up, never happened. So this, in a sense, this is a lie. But this lie seemed to have this positive truth-promoting effect. But the question is, why is this story has this truth-promoting effect? We hypothesized that is because the story has this very positive message. It actually says like this. So George Washington's father discovered his favorite cherry tree was chopped down. So he asked, who chopped down my favorite cherry tree? George Washington said, I cannot lie, Dad, I chopped down your cherry tree. And then George Washington's father said, I would rather have one honest son than 1,000 cherry trees. So the message was supremely positive. And we thought if that's the case, then if we turn this story into a negative one, in which George Washington actually lied about him chopping down the cherry tree, what would happen? And turned out significantly more kids would lie in this situation. So basically, if you want to tell a moral story to promote truth telling, maybe any other moral behaviors, you need to use positive messaging, not negative messaging. So that's my suggestion based upon this finding. Okay. So now, so why do children lie? So one of the main reasons children lie is to protect themselves. But there are other situations children lie that is very like we adults. We lie to win a competition because there are always limited resources out there. So, and this is the one, and I showed you a paradigm. I said I'm going to show you a video about the paradigm we're doing. And this is, so I'm going to show you a video first. In this video, a child who is about 3 and who did not know how to lie from day 1. And we follow him longitudinally for 10 days. So let's find out how he learned how to tell lies.
The discovery of lying study. The study is conducted over a 10-day period, and this is Tang Tang's first day. The researcher asks him to choose his favorite candy. Then she explains the rules of the game. He must hide a candy in one of the 3 cups. If Uncle finds the candy, he gets to eat it. If he can't, then Tang Tang gets the candy. The game is in full swing. Kang Li covers his eyes and Tang Tang hides the candy. When Li asks, "Where's the candy?" Tang Tang readily points to the cup where he hid it. He keeps giving away his favorite candy because he's incapable of telling a lie. After 10 trials, it's time to call it a day. And Tang Tang gets a sticker for his effort. This is day 3 for Tang Tang. He looks wistfully at the candy. Telling a lie is actually a very complex affair. For Tang Tang to lie, he first has to inhibit the truth. Then he has to know that what he knows is something that Li doesn't. He has to hold the truth in his mind while he invents a lie. This ability signals a crucial milestone in a child's development. Clearly, Tang Tang isn't there yet. Tang Tang has now been playing the game for 5 days. The first glimmer of a strategy appears when he covers the cup with his hand as if to hide the candy. But he still can't refrain from telling the truth. The next time when Li asks where the candy is, he wavers. Something is beginning to stir. Will he actually figure out how to deceive Li? He points to a cup. It's empty. He's won the candy this time. The look of triumph is unmistakable.
Anyhow, so this is what we found. So it turned out there are 3 groups of kids. So one group of kids, they learn very quickly, shoot up the next, so 30% the first day, and the next day they go to 100% and stay there. The second group, they kind of goes up quite steadily over time. So by about 8th day, they are doing 100%. And then the third group kind of doing very slowly. So by the 10th day, they are still performing on just around the chance level. So who are these 3 group of kids? Turns out the 3 group of kids are different in terms of the executive functioning and theory mind. The fast discovery group have the high EF score and the highest theory mind score. And then intermediate discovery group have high EF score, but the medium theory mind score. And slow discovery group had both low EF score and theory mind score. So as you can see, so these behavior, the theory mind and executive functioning are able to make predictions about how fast you will learn how to tell lies. And And then the next question is, are children poor liars? So, and then, so I haven't set up a poll, but I would like you to just use the chat box if you, to tell me your guess, which child is lying. So I'm going to show you two kids who are telling the truth or lie. They are asked, when I was gone, did you peek at the toy? And they all say no. But one child is lying, one child is telling the truth. So your job is to decide which child is lying, which child is telling the truth by typing in the number, okay? So you are ready. So let's start with child number one, okay?
Did you peek? No.
Okay, child number one.
Did you peek? No.
Child number two. So who do you think is telling a lie? So type in 1 or 2. Yeah, so I see a lot of 1s and a few 2s. So the actual liar is child number 2. Okay, so now let's move on to the next one. So I give you 2 more kids. So this is child number 3. Okay.
Did you peek at the prize?
Okay, and child number 4.
Did you peek at the prize?
Okay, so child number 3 is lying or child number 4 is lying? Yeah, this time quite even, I think. So child number 3 is lying, child number 4 is telling the truth. Okay, so but don't worry. So so your performance is just similar to almost thousands of our participants. So we've done similar kind of studies, but they're much harder ones than I'm doing right now. So we give participants each individual video, and they have to judge whether or not the child they are looking at is lying or telling the truth. Okay, so and we have hundreds of these videos. And the first of all, we show to university students and law school students. And then we basically ask them to judge whether or not the child is lying or not lying. So the chance rate is 50%. So can undergrads, law school students, and undergrad students detect children's lies? No, they cannot. So the kids are between 3 to 7 years of age. Okay, so this is reasonable because these students have no experience with the kids most of the time. So they should not be able to detect children's lies. But then we had social workers, child protection lawyers who work with kids on a daily basis. Their job is to assess whether or not the kids' allegations of child abuse are true. So these guys should be able to detect children's lies. But unfortunately, they cannot. So their performance is around 50%. Then we thought maybe we should look at the judges, custom officers, police officers who deal with liars on a daily basis. Maybe they should be able to detect children's lies better. And turns out they cannot. And then, so some people say, Kang, what about teachers? What about parents? So we'll say, okay, so we then show videos of other parents' kids to parents to ask them to detect children's lies. And turns out their performance is 50%. So not good. Then some parents said, well, Kang, because these kids we are not familiar with, but I can tell whether or not my kids are lying, or my own kids are lying. So we set up a study in which we bring both parents and the child to our lab, and then we put the parents in another room watching a closed circuit TV, and then child in another room, we're doing the study. But at some point, the parents do not know whether or not their kids peeked at the toy. And then at the critical moment, we show parents the live video of the child being questioned. When I was gone, did you peek? And we want to know whether or not parents are able to detect their own children's lies. And turns out they cannot. So their performance is also around 50%. So basically, nobody in the world can detect children's lies. So yeah, that means just the kids' lies are quite good at a quite young age already. If you rely on their nonverbal behavior, their facial expression, you cannot detect the lies. For example, the majority of kids, when they lie, they will look into your eyes. They don't look nervous, they look serious. So it's just very difficult for you to use some common sense knowledge to detect children's lies. Anyhow, so this is
I'm really sorry to barge in, but we're almost out of time.
yeah, that's exactly where I plan to stop. So.
Well, sorry. Thank you for fascinating talk. And if people can put their questions in the Q&A box, we can start getting them answered.
So while people are typing, one question I have is, have you worked directly in sort of court situations with like eyewitness testimony? Have you done much in like in the actual applied sort of space, assisting in sort of real practical things? Because as you noted at the start, there's so many practical implications of this.
Yes. So I myself has tangentially related done some of the work, but my student Victoria Tawa has been witnesses for the defense, sometimes for the prosecution, and my colleague Tom Lyon, who was the leading authority in the United States, so he has done a lot of work involves about kids' definition of lying and kids' tendency to lie, and how to encourage kids to lie. And interestingly, so if you look him up, it's amazing. He done amazing amount of work. One important thing I hope eventually will be used in all the courts of the world is a very interesting technique he developed. That is, he actually lied to kids to say the perpetrator has confessed and told the child that it's okay to tell the truth about what happened. And in that situation, kids are more likely to tell the truth. So they will tell you, disclose abuse if it happened. But none of the kids would disclose anything if nothing happened. So that's amazing results. And so he's using this in California to do this, and training interviewers to do this with the kids because it's constitutionally legal in the United States to lie to people to get information. So, but it may not be correct. It's not in Canada. So, and in UK, it may not be legal either. So but in the United States, it's totally legal. Therefore, he developed this very ingenious method. So.
Fascinating. The next question is from Joanna Demari Cotton. Joanna says, fascinating. If executive functioning and theory of mind are associated with improved lying, on the one hand, how does it relate to children's development of moral understanding of the wrongness of lying? Does propensity to lie and moral understanding of the wrongness of lying develop in parallel?
Yeah, there's no relation whatsoever. So I'm sorry. So yeah, there's no correlation whatsoever. And from very young age all the way to older age. So the wrongness of the older kids know the lying is wrong, but they lie anyway. Younger kids, sometimes they know lying is wrong or lying is right, and then they are not correlated with their actual decision to lie or not to lie.
And the next question is from Caleb Reynolds. How strongly do EF and theory of mind relate to lying among adults? Is it kind of a threshold thing such that kids need to develop enough of it to successfully lie, or do they continue to predict even past that initial ability?
So this is an excellent question. I've not done very much studies with adults, but I believe these two abilities are going to be essential even when you are older. It's not necessary to make decisions about what to lie, but how to lie and how to make your subsequent statements consistent with your initial lie. So that is the foundational. So we found older kids, if they have good theory of mind abilities, in particular second order theory of mind abilities, they are going to lie better, and their lies are more difficult to be detected.
And then for the last question, because we're almost at time, Alyssa Becker has a question. Thank you for this talk, how fascinating. I have one question about the 3 groups of kids that learned at lying at different rates. How did you group them? Was this determined statistically based on percentiles, on something else? Why did you not analyze it as one group and predict lying rates using EF and theory of mind?
Yeah, so if you're interested, you can go and look up the paper, and the data is also there. You can download, you can analyze. But what we did was we used the cluster analysis according to the kids' performance. So we do a cluster analysis, and then it just naturally 3 groups came out. And then we looked back at their theory of mind and executive functioning. So it's done statistically.
I think with that, we are at the end of today's International Moral Psychology seminar series. So thank you so much to both of our speakers.